Getting shit done number 3. So we're moving a little bit closer now to discussing the actual planner. I probably won't get to it in this video, so I'm just going to talk about some more specific setup points, which I think you really need to have considered before we go on to have a look at the actual planner. So number 1, F, motivation. This is something that I struggle with a little bit with students. They come to me and they're like, Chris, I'm not motivated to do X, Y, Z. And I like that they can come to me, and I always make it clear to my tutor students and the people who take my module and my PhD students, if they need motivation, I'll give them a kick up the arse whenever they need it. I'm quite good at doing that. But it's never like, here's a kick up your arse, there's your motivation, because that's not how it works. Motivation doesn't work like that. But perhaps in some certain contexts it does. I'm trying to think about like coaches with old school coaches, like shouting at their athletes, whipping them to make them go faster, but we're not allowed to work like that anymore. So they come to me for motivation, and I talk to them through like why they think they're suffering from lack of motivation. I make them realize that degrees aren't the most interesting things in the world. With all the will in the world, we try and make them interesting, but academics are nerds, they're geeky, they get really interested in stuff that for a lot of people is really boring. And we construct degrees, right? So it doesn't matter that I might teach really cool shit, right? I might teach about drugs and violence and pain and injuries and athlete abuse and racism and all this like stuff that you can get into. Some of my colleagues have to teach about biomechanics. So anyway, my point is, they have to think about the degree as just the normal life stuff. Like, who's motivated to brush their teeth? Who's motivated to clean the car? Who's motivated to take the dog out for a walk? Now, we can enjoy these things along the way, but we don't require motivation, do we? So F, motivation. What we need is a plan and a set of responsibilities. That's what we need. Now, my undergraduate students have got responsibility to do some work. If they don't achieve that, they won't achieve a good grade. If they don't achieve that, there's a knock on. So you're like, okay, well, you're going to probably pass this degree, right? Most undergrads who get through into the second year, well, most undergrads who start pass their degree. But if you final year and you're struggling with motivation, just don't worry about motivation and get yourself a plan. So this is where some of this sort of thinking about yearly planning, yearly, yes, but weekly planning came in. So first off, we have to really think about our yearly plan. Now, the last video is all about that. And it's worth doing and making sure that you download the yearly planner and fill it out. I think I didn't mention that in the video actually, but download the yearly planner, get that, fill it out properly. Once we've got that, then we can start to go, right, what are the things that I've got to do? What are my responsibilities? Well, I've got Chris's lecture to watch. I've got a meeting to attend. I've got to do some exercise. What are those responsibilities? Because they come from what your yearly planner is. Once you've got them, you put them into your weekly planner. You give yourself enough time and enough rest to achieve them. And that's it. You just execute it. You don't wake up in the morning thinking, oh, I'm not going to brush my teeth today. It doesn't even come into your mind. And the same with your weekly planner. You wake up, you look at it and you think, that's completely achievable. Let's go. And you go and do it. So it's less about motivation. It's more about organization and execution. That's what we're after. And if anyone's watching this who sees their own students, that's a really good thing for them to think about. It's a very adult way of dealing with it, right? The opposite is like, oh, I don't want to do that, so I'm not going to do it. Like a childlike mentality about the responsibilities of being an adult. Soz, you can't do that. You've got to do these things. All right. So this is why we do this weekly planning. That's the setup. That's why this works. That's why we get shit done, because we move away from motivation and we move into the execution of things that we need to do to achieve what we want to do. This is why we need that set of planning for the year and even bigger to figure out if it is what we want to do. Because long term, if we're trying to do stuff in the week that doesn't make sense to us, we will struggle. We will not have any way of delivering things which we look at and go, this isn't what I want to do. For a short time we can. Okay, adding in small rewards. Now this is something that it has to be situated at the level that you're at. So again, if I'm speaking to my undergrad students, they'll know that I know some of them can't concentrate for more than 15 minutes. So I'll say some of your goals are 15 minutes of reading where you where you try your best to not let your mind wander just for 15 minutes and you work really hard at it. But after that, because that's a challenge at that level, you give yourself a reward. It doesn't have to be a big one. It could be a cup of tea. It could be a walk. It could be a Rick and Morty program on show on Netflix, whatever. The point is that you situate your the things that are your things that you have to get done, the bits, with a reward to where you are, not where you think you are, not where you want to be, but where you are. So I know I can read all morning. I can sit and read all morning, and I'll have a couple of breaks in the way somewhere, but I'll basically read all morning. And I know a lot of my students can't do that. So where are you? Where's your bit? So number one, figure out what your small jobs are, how small they have to be, and then make sure that you give yourself rewards for them. Connected to that, we have to have a progression, right? The point of these planners is that you can reflect and you can consider it. And when you've got your Monday, I must read from X to X, and you achieve it, well, then you can reflect on that and go, next Monday, I can read from X to X plus 10. Okay, wicked. Now we've got some progression. Just in the same way as we go to the gym and we add some weights onto stuff, or we run for longer or whatever, we do add some progression along the way, especially if you're developing in academia, right? Especially if you're doing an undergrad, especially if you're doing a master's. You need to be able to push yourself because you have to constantly get better. The work that you do at the first year will be not as good as the work you do in your final year, and the same with the PhD process. So you have to build in that development. Okay, this is one that I pulled out of Atomic Habits, book called Atomic Habits. And this is about linking changes in behavior to current behavior. So if you want to do something that you're not already doing, link it to something that you do. So if you know you go and have cups of tea 4 times a day, there's something else you want to do 4 times a day, you can connect the two. So when I go to my to go and have a cup of tea, I get my computer out and I check my email. But they're the only 4 times I check them in the day. Are you a serial email checker? Someone who's like, ping, oh, I'll answer that, and it throws you. Well, check it 4 times a day when you have your cup of tea. Now that sounds like you're ruining your break there as well. So make sure you still have your break, but think on that as well as a way of developing that. The other way to think about it is, if you want to have some sort of physical activity break, you want to do more physical activity, have that as part of your break, right? Okay, I've got a break here. I'm just going to go for a walk. I'm just going to walk around the block. It's not much, but I'm going to do it when I have this break. What you'll find is, because it's a break and it's positive, there's a positive way of thinking about walking around the block. Do you want to spend more time in the pub? Right? Do you want to spend more time in the pub? Do you want to be more social? Do you want to meet more people? Do you want to come and have a pint with me? Well, read your book in the pub. It's the perfect place to read. Yeah, you might need headphones, whatever. But do you want to get out of the house more? Do you need to actually get out of the house more? We'd normally say the opposite, right? Spend less time in the pub. No. Some people need to spend a lot more time in the pub. So take your book there and do the last part of your day's reading in the pub. That's what I do. Anyway, and for my problems. Okay, so the better you get at planning, the more you can push it. So this is a skill like anything. So if you've never planned, you've never done time blocking for a week, and again, I'm probably speaking to my undergrads here, you'll be rubbish at it. You won't, and all of us are when we start, wherever you start, but you will be rubbish at it, and you'll do too much, you'll not do enough, you'll get confused, you won't have enough detail. So remember that and give yourself a breather. So the first few times you do this, expect to be all over the place. But remember as well, once you get better and more refined, you can push yourself. And I don't mean push yourself to do more. I usually mean push yourself to do more, but in a quicker time so you can chill out more. That's how I like to think about this stuff. I talk about it in the book when people are kind of like cultures in academia where people are like really focused on doing like long days in the office. And that's never been interesting to me. I've always been wanting to do exactly what I need to do in that day and then get out of the office, because there's no one watching me to see if I even go into the office. So let's just get the things I've got to get done and get out. So that's where I can push myself more. Okay, I've got 1,000 words to do today. I'm going to do it from X to X, not X to 10 o'clock at night. I should be saying X to Y, shouldn't I? So yeah, thinking about pushing your planning so that it gets more accurate, but accuracy not necessarily to be more productive, but to have more relaxation. And remember, trying to be more productive does not usually result in being more productive. Trying to have more time to relax, recover, and think often does result in being more productive. So when I have my best moments of productivity, it's usually when I've just really sorted everything out. I don't overwork, I don't underwork. I just go along and I have a nice balance between exercise, social life, and work, and my productivity flows from there. Whereas when I've got to really do loads and loads of stuff, I tend to find myself, I'll get a little bit stressed for a while, marking, for example, and then I find it harder to get it done. And if I had to keep that up long term, I'd struggle. Luckily, marking only comes for me really once or twice a year. Okay. Couple of bits that are kind of the opposite to each other. So you have to think through these two together. Number one, on bitty jobs, so just stuff, I've got to write a reference, or I've got these 3 emails that I need to think about when I reply, but they're bitty. They don't require big focus. If you get them done, well done. Like, chop it, chill, done. I've set myself half an hour to get these tasks done, and I've done them in 10. Wicked. Take that 20 minutes. Take that 20 minutes as a little bit of buyback time, because you nailed it. You've got your kind of jobs that you've got to achieve, and you've just done it. So do something else and give yourself that reward of that extra time. Yes, you probably need to think in future, yeah, I need a bit less time to do that job, but just, that's fine. Give yourself that breather. But at the same time, just give yourself a moment before you do to think about what's next. So you've done your bitty job. What are you doing next after this break? Just have a think on that and set it up so that while you're then just chilling and you're watching something, your subconscious is doing a little bit of preparation ready for that next job. And I'll come on to subconscious a little bit in a minute. And then the opposite, instead of the bitty job, the long job. So what's the long job? The long job is the one where you actually might be able to find flow. Now, it's very hard to find flow when you're doing emails or whatever in your bitty jobs. But when you're doing a long job, when this happens in academia quite a lot, reading, thinking, writing, it's possible to find flow. And if you ever find flow, you can't come out of it, right? If you do, you go, right, I've done my 1,000 words for the day. That was really good. I was really flying at that point. And you've done it. You should really try and stay in that. Now, this is slightly against what I said in the previous job, right? And I'm very aware the need for recovery and rest. And maybe you had flow because you were only focusing for an hour, but try and stick with it for a bit. And if you can get an extra half hour and it starts to disappear, then fine. But you've got that extra bit and you may have got another 300 words out of it there. So just something to be aware of is, again, this is a plan that you're setting for yourself. If it needs to shift in certain ways to match the way that you're working, it shifts. And if you're in the flow and you're in the groove of writing, don't pull yourself out of it because the bloody plan said so. Stick with what you need to do. However, you also need to remember that you still do need that chill time. So if you take up your chill time from that because you carried on working, you've got to pull it back from somewhere else. And you've got to say to yourself, right, tomorrow, instead of 2,000 words or 500 words, I'm doing half because I did it today. And build the change into your plan just to take the pressure off yourself. And then one other thing connected to this, try not to fully max out everything you can do in those flow states. So by that, I mean, you're writing, you know, you've got to link this next bit up, you link it up. And, you know, there's one more thing you've got to do and you could just finish that and you know you can finish it, but don't. And leave that there. Make some notes about it. Remember what it was and where you were and how you were thinking about it. But leave it there for tomorrow or the day after. The reason for that is that when you rejoin back to that piece of work, there's a chance, not a massive chance because flow is hard to find, but there's a chance you might be able to pick up the flow. Go, where was I? Oh, I was there. I read through that and now I move into this next section. The next section might, hopefully, fingers crossed, lead you into another section of flow. And if you get that, you'll find that everything starts to come together. Okay, hinted at this earlier. Give your subconscious a time to breathe, right? We tend to spend all this time reading about emails, thinking about what we've got to do in these tasks that we've got to do. And the task orientation really pulls us away from the ability just to have that moment of peace, which I think, I'm no neurologist, I think is where the subconscious does a lot of its work, right? For me, and I'm only really going off personal experience here, but I think there's something in it. When I give myself the time to stop, and I'm forced to do it because I walk the dog quite a bit, and I like to go to the pub and just sit on my own and relax. When those moments happen, I tend to find either my brain starts going and gives me stuff to write about, to think about, and I put it into my iPhone, or when I wake up the next day, I'm ready to go. And I'm ready at 6 o'clock because I'm that weird person who always wakes up dead early, and I'll be writing at 6 a.m. And that'll be because I've given myself a little bit of time the day before just to process a few of the things and move through them. So think on that as well. Build that in. Build that thinking time. If your day is like 9 to 5 blocked out without bits to stop and think, I think you're missing out on what the subconscious can do for you. And I always think the subconscious is like this, it's like free work. It's cheat mode. Right? Instead of me having to figure out an idea with my actual reflective brain, which is slow, like all of us, just let the subconscious do it. And the subconscious works in these whacked out, wicked ways. And it takes some figuring out. And the reflective mind has to do the work on it eventually. But the subconscious really helps tick through some stuff. But it won't if you don't give it space. If you're constantly stressed and you're not able to feed that time into it and allow it to actually breathe, it won't. Okay, last couple, and then we'll move on. And eventually we'll get to looking at this actual planner. Okay, don't set yourself up to fail. So first off, if you don't think about your plan properly, you'll bite off more than you can chew, right? So don't say you're going to write a paper in a week. Don't say you're going to read a book in a day. Obvious. So obviously don't set yourself up to fail. But at the same time, don't be a slave to this thing. If you wake up and it says read 10 pages and you really can't think about reading, but you want to write something, or actually you feel quite task orientated, you want to do your emails, just do them. Like, you can't predict exactly how these things are going to play out in the week. So you have to be able to go with the flow of what you need to do at that time. Now, I have said earlier that you make a plan and then you execute it, of course, and that's what we're aiming for. However, sometimes that plan has to shift. You cannot be a slave to this thing in front of your desk, right? That's the last thing I want. And when I think about like producing these things, I just think, oh, someone's going to sit there and they're going to be gutted because they've not achieved this thing that they've decided they're going to do. And I really want to make sure no one does that. So it's your plan. If you decide you need to change it, not just want to change it, but need to change it, then go ahead, change it and fit whatever it was somewhere else. And at the same time, then you've got to think about how your brain works. So what is it that you like to do in the morning? If it's emails, go for it. If it's reading, go for it. If it's writing, whatever. If it's recording lectures on the fly, do that. Whatever your brain works best. Sometimes people can do their emails in the evening, no problem, because it's quite quick, bitty stuff. I can't read and write in the evening. I've got no chance. But I can do bitty things. And I often check my emails just before I go to bed. Weird, isn't it? But it means that I don't have to worry about it the next day. So I wake up the next day, done my emails, there was no issues. So I'm going to read until like 10, 11 at night, 11 in the morning, get loads done in the morning. Then I'll start worrying about the bitty stuff. Okay. Think about specific, this is the last one now. Think about specific jobs that you're going to do, specific bits of time blocked things you're going to do. But they have to be specific to you. So what is it? So if it's, I've got to do some lectures, right? Okay, you've got to listen to some lectures. That's fine. Write them in, and that you're going to watch for how long? What's your time? Because you can't say, right, listen to lectures and then just put 2 hours and assume that that's going to make you do it. No. What's your brain work like? Can it do 20 minutes without losing concentration? That's specific to you. Writing. Are you the person who writes for half an hour or writes 200 words? What's the thing that works best for you? One of my PhD students can't have a number attached to it because of that problem of beating it or missing it, but can write for 30 minutes. That's fine. Doesn't matter. So figure out what it is. I'm going to read. What are you going to read? Right, I'm going to read for half an hour, or I'm going to read 10 pages. Whatever. That's where you have to really think. I've talked about this in the previous video about the kind of detail that's needed when we start doing this planning. if you don't have that sort of detail and don't consider it of how it's specific to the job you've got to do and how you need to do it, you're setting yourself up to fail. And this, all the planning in the world can just result in anxiety and stress. And we don't want that. I certainly don't want that.